All the news about Travis Hunter, and it is nothing that you have not heard before here on Locked On Jaguars, but we're going to talk about it.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Jaguars. I am Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, and here's what we'll be discussing today. At the end of the show, we'll land this plane talking about how many picks will the Jaguars actually make. Right smack in the middle of the show, superpowers and intangibles. We'll give you the meaning of it. And at the very top, though, we have to start with what's this about Travis Hunter? What I mean by that is Ian Rappaport had he reported yesterday that Travis Hunter is going to be a full-time corner and sprinkled in a little bit with the offense as a wide receiver. All right, so that's the news. All right, so let me tell you what the news here is on Locked On Jaguars. We told you that 6 months ago. Not only did we tell you that, maybe not 6, maybe 4 months ago, but not only did we tell you that 4 months ago, we actually said it when he got drafted, that eventually this is what he was going to do. He was going to play more cornerback than he was going to play wide receiver. Liam Coen actually sat down in an interview process and at some point said, when Travis walked in the door, and I'm going to paraphrase, this is not a quote, that when Travis walked in the door as a Jaguar, he could roll out of bed and play corner, basically. He needed more refinement and more work at wide receiver. So if they were going to play him at both spots and they did not know what it was going to look like, they even said themselves that he needed more work at wide receiver than he did at cornerback, where his instincts and his technique and all of those things, he was ready to go. So with that being said, this absolutely surprises no one. Here's the bigger, not really an issue, but here's the bigger story with it. It is going to be a story until Travis Hunter does things on the football field that will make people forget that the Jaguars traded 2 first-round draft picks for him. It is going to be a big story until Travis Hunter goes out and either displays that he is a top 3, top 4 corner, or they actually use him at corner and he plays well and then he returns a punt or goes into the game at some point and catches a touchdown and makes a move. And then it's going to be like, well, that's where he needs to be all the time. So let me break this down for you and tell you why this is a big deal to me personally. Because we had a new coach, new staff, new GM. They traded 2 picks, got Travis Hunter in. If you're a Jaguar fan, you totally understood the move. It's not just about being box office. It's not just about getting attention and selling tickets to the franchise. That quarterbacks do that kind of stuff, right? And contrary to popular belief, the Jaguars tickets are not that easy. I mean, it's not like they're just sitting out there for cheap every week. That's a narrative that doesn't ring true when you look at the amount of numbers and amount of tickets that were moved based on the market size. The Jaguars are right smack in the middle of this thing. So that's not true either. Here's the thing about Travis Hunter and why Jacksonville picked him. And I'll go back over this. The Jaguar fans know this. It was a draft where if they sit there and whether they're right or wrong, they weren't taking Mason Graham. It kind of looks like now, because everyone believes, including me, that they need interior pass rush from the 3 technique position, that's what they were going to do. But just like James Gladstone said yesterday when they met with the media in the pre-draft luncheon, we don't worry about guys that we had talks about and then they go somewhere else and they play well. Good for them. It just didn't line up that way for us. And now, in a second off season, they have not made a move at 3 technique because they have Eric Armstead and Mason Smith. Whether you believe those guys are good or not does not matter. It matters what they believe. It matters what they believe and why those guys, whether it be injuries or whatever, didn't play the way all of us thought that they should have been playing. And I'm in agreement with people that the pass rush needs to improve from the interior more than it does from the outside. But back to the point of why they picked Hunter. He was the most dynamic player in the draft from an athletic profile and a production standpoint. He's intangibly rich, which they talk about all the time, and we'll also talk about that in segment 2. College and the NFL are different. And I'll say that for 2 reasons that I'll explain in a minute. But the Jaguars actually needed an injection of athleticism, speed, playmaking, and overall otherworldly talent. They weren't going to get that picking somebody else at another spot. They picked Travis. They also, if you look at last year's draft and this year's draft, and there'll be some subjectivity to this, but in my personal opinion, Travis Hunter is the best non-quarterback in both drafts. So people have told me for years that folks look at drafts in twos, like this year and next year. It's like the Jaguars knew or hoped that they wouldn't be picking that high again. So while they were up there, we're just going to go ahead and get this dude. And then this year's draft is kind of ho-hum a little bit. There's a price to pay for moving up to take somebody like that. And I know a lot of people wouldn't have done it. A lot of GMs wouldn't have done it. But the Jaguars did do it. Now, just because someone gets injured should not disqualify them in the mind of a rational person unless that person is just trying to make themselves right or be smart. If you watch Travis Hunter in the Monday night game, if you saw the Jaguars and the Chiefs, Travis Hunter was the best football player on that field. He was one of the three best players on the field when they played the Rams, even though they got blown out. He had 108 yards and a touchdown, and then was guarding Davante Adams, a future Hall of Famer, one-on-one down the field, to the point where Davante Adams and Matthew Stafford, both probably future Hall of Famers, said, that's a good kid, man. We like him. We like what that's all about. And that's the big picture part of this that folks seem to be missing. All right. So just because they might need Mason Smith this year, according to some people, but you can look at it and say they still haven't moved on the three technique position. They had all last year to do it, all this year. That tells you it's not a priority. So they can't move the way that we want them to move, right? This thing about him all of a sudden, like he's on all of a sudden just like this is some grand big decision. And I'm sure Ian Rappaport, with all due respect to him, he probably had a conversation with James Gladstone where that's reiterated. But it's not new to us because they told us this was going to happen. At the exit interviews after the end of the season, Gladstone says, well, you can kind of look at where we have free agents and where we need help and kind of get the hint of where we're going to play him. And maybe Travis has come to the realization that while I can be a great receiver and I can be a great corner, it's very hard to do that in the National Football League simultaneously. It's so hard that no one has ever done it. Charles Woodson didn't do it. Champ Bailey didn't do it. And Deion Sanders certainly didn't do it either. So we're dealing with this thing of these new people came in here last year under this situation and folks thought that they didn't know what they were doing. And you should think that because you've never seen them coach before. You didn't understand what they were going to do. And they were trying to do something someone had never done. Travis gets hurt and then they go 13-4. You would think that would buy them at least a little bit of credibility. You would think that would buy them a little bit of, all right, man, let's give them a chance. But no, we're right back to where we were when everyone thinks that these guys don't know what they're doing or that you got former players even saying it's a mistake. You got other former players saying about time they played him at full-time corner. This is what we expect. So you're going to get opinions one way or the other, but you're also going to get the skewed opinions that are all about the draft and all about compensation and all about them not thinking he's as good. I watched the tape. I don't know how you don't think he's as good as he really was. I really don't. I don't know how you look at Travis Hunter play corner and say, and they want to point out the one game with Alec Ayomaner from Stanford. Okay, the ball beats you sometimes, right? How do you watch tape and say he won't be a good pro? I don't get that. So when folks say that kind of stuff and call him an average wide receiver and an average corner, to me, that's a little bit far-fetched and way off base. And it's something sometimes you got to go garbage in and garbage out with it because you think that that's not just subjectivity. That's just a little bit of, I want to be right about this. We can argue all day about compensation, but we cannot argue about the fact that this is a really a non-issue. It's not a big story as far as the local people here are concerned, not just me, but other local guys. We're all looking around each other, scratching our head like, okay, why is everybody talking about this like this is some kind of breaking news or something? Because it isn't. It absolutely is not some sort of breaking news. All right, what we're going to do is talk about some of these superpower intangible things that make Travis Hunter and players like him such intriguing options for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show sponsored and brought to you by TurboTax. It's tax time, but for a lot of us, the old way of doing taxes, it's a lot. Trying to book an appointment that is not the most convenient, sitting in a waiting room and with a stack of papers, emailing back and forth and wondering if they got your situation, right? If they really got it right. But this year, you're getting a major upgrade into it. TurboTax now has in-person locations nationwide. You can meet face-to-face with a real tax expert, and your documents get uploaded straight to your TurboTax app on the spot. And just like that, you're done. Your tax expert works to get you every dollar you deserve while you get real-time notifications as you go about your day. It's the relief of walking in and meeting a real person and walking out knowing your taxes are being handled right. Head to turbotax.com/local to find a store near you and make sure you book your appointment. All right, rolling along here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. Always thanking you for making us your first listener. Make sure you look down in the description where you'll see a link for the Everydayers Club. This is whether you watch or listen, right? And make sure you tap on that link. When you do, you're going to open up a whole new world, man. For as little as $5, you can have access to our Locked On branded merchandise that you can only get by being an Everydayer and a member of the Everydayers Club, as well as ad-free shows that go out to our audio platform partners. Please make sure you become an Everydayer. I got a little something special for you, too. A little back and forth with me coming up during training camp, so we'll make sure that we get to that. All right, let's talk about these two terms that we hear all the time: intangibly rich, or intangibles, and superpowers. I'm going to give you an example of what I believe a superpower is. Let's talk about Travis. Travis's superpower is his athleticism, his instincts, his talent, and the fact that he's like Batman. The dude just doesn't run out of energy, right? So those are also things that could be intangibles. His intangibles are his superpowers. To go along with, he has superb athleticism. You're talking about a dude that basically has been the best player on the field at every level at some point, and I wouldn't expect that to change once he got here to the NFL. It absolutely didn't. There were points last year where you saw he was the best Jaguar player on the field. You throw a little pass to him against Seattle or Houston, and he makes 3 or 4 people miss, and he gets a first down in a running catch situation. A jump ball against Kansas City on Monday night where Trevor Lawrence put the ball up in the air, and he went and got it, right? In between some very, very good football players. Touches the ball and dynamic things happen. A phantom call in week 1 against the Bengals that maybe the Jaguars win 14 games instead of 13 if that bad call doesn't happen, because that was a 4th down play that they call a bogus pass interference call. And this was from a guy who had not had very many reps in practice for the Cincinnati during the preseason, and that was game 1 or game 2. So here's where we are as an organization, right? You're looking for people that can come in and be instant contributors, or to be able to come in and create competition that is, by the way, an instant contribution. But you want them to do the thing that they do the absolute best. Now, because it's a superpower of theirs, it doesn't mean that the level of that particular superpower is better than other people around the league. We have to understand that. It's all relative to you. Like, what is your greatest attribute that someone else finds useful where you can be a good player for their football team? I'll give you an example of not a first-round pick, no-brainer type like Travis Hunter. So the example that I'll give you has more to do with someone who is likely going to be a day 2 or a day 3 pick. Let's just say a dude played in the Big 12 or the Big 10 or the SEC or ACC, wherever. And he's a name you know because he played on a winning team. And he's a defensive back, but he's 5'11", 198, and he showed up at the combine and ran a 4.62. Obviously, speed isn't his greatest intangible superpower because he ran a 4.62. Obviously, size at that position, he's average or maybe a little bit below average. That is not his superpower either. So why was the dude first team all conference 2 years in a row and a second team all American? Because you look, and this isn't a particular player, this is just a scenario. You look at the tape and he's everywhere. You look at the tape and he never misses a tackle in the open field. You look at the tape and he just keeps jumping out at you. He's everywhere that something good for your team happens, he's around it. That's his superpower. He's instinctive. He has a navigation system, and he doesn't miss tackles in the open field. Now, do you have a spot for a player like that on your team? Is tackling a problem? Give you an example. Remember last year, like nobody thought Jakobi Myers was an all-world wide receiver, and they probably still don't. But he had a skill that at the time that was absolutely bothersome to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And what that skill is he doesn't drop balls. I remember James Gladstone saying it. He catches everything. The ball gets near him and he finds a way to bring it down. So guess what his superpower is? Finding a way to secure the football in the middle of the field and get a first down or to keep the chains moving. That's it. Just as simple as that. So you don't have to actually be great, because if you're great at everything, you're a first round pick or maybe a second round pick at worst, right? Or if you're really, really good at a lot of stuff. But if you're a third, fourth, fifth, sixth round pick, what is the thing that separates you, or what is the thing that a team can say, yeah, you know what? He might not do this and do this and do that, but he kind of makes up for it because he does this thing. I'll give you an example of somebody in history that's that way. Zach Thomas, Hall of Fame linebacker for the Miami Dolphins. Zach Thomas was 5'10". I know they listed him at 5'11". He wasn't a 5'11". I stood right next to him down in South Florida. Zach Thomas was 5'10", maybe. Zach Thomas was 215, 220, maybe, especially when he came into the league. But he ran like the wind. He saw everything before it happened. He tackled in open space. He played in coverage, and he's in the Hall of Fame for it, right? So those intangibles, even though they were less likely to be a success because of the things that he was missing that people in the NFL covet, his intangibles outweighed that. He played for Jimmy Johnson that used a lot of small, instinctive linebackers who had quickness in short areas. Had he gone to another team, there would have been some traits, dominant type GM or coach, and Lord knows we've seen a lot of them around here, where they probably wouldn't even given him a chance to be any more than a special teams player and a spot duty player when someone was hurt. I had a former scout, a buddy of mine. He's actually the director of college scout right now at the University of Texas. He told me he coached at Indiana and he was in personnel at Indiana. At the time Michael McFadden was chosen, he had moved on. He had went to Texas A&M and then back to Tennessee State. He told me something about Michael McFadden. He said, "Wait, let me tell you something. Whoever drafts him is going to get a kid that is a great blitzer on third down from the linebacker position." In fact, he said the best secondary blitzer I've ever seen from that spot. He never misses tackles. If he gets in the backfield, the quarterback is going down. He's going to make tackles behind the line of scrimmage. And this is the most important thing. He'll come in as a backup, and if somebody gets hurt, it's going to be very, very hard to replace him. Now, when you think about that, and the fact that it actually happened the exact same way, that's the part of recognizing things, in my opinion, that amount to superpowers. And those superpowers are everything that the guy just mentioned, and that's why McFadden was on the field. And right now, when I look at the Giants depth chart, and I know they got a new coaching staff, Michael McFadden is sitting there as the starting weak side linebacker. Still, to this day, just got a second deal. I think he got a 1-year deal because he had coming off of injury. But these are the things that make you believe people can be intangibly rich. And this is why the Jaguars may like people that some other teams don't like. So when they go into the draft with these 11 picks, and I'm going to get to those 11 picks because I thought that maybe that would trim down to 6 or 7 and move around and get prepared for next year and use those picks for other things, and they still might. How many of those picks are they going to actually use? From the sound of it, they're very, very intrigued by a lot of prospects that will line up with where they're trying to select, and we'll hit that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. And today's show sponsored and brought to you by Indeed. It's correct. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing. The one position you have to fill is still sitting there open. When the pressure is on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, locations. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been sitting here spitting this out for you, I'm telling you right now, companies have made 27 hires on Indeed. 27 by the time I finish reading this, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners, this show will get $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. All right, man, we ripping and running here on Locked On Jaguars, where it is your team every day. How many picks will they make? The Jaguars have 11 draft picks. I'm going to put the over-under at 8.5. I know y'all say that like, man, you ain't telling us nothing. That means they're going to make 8 or 9, right? 8 or 9 picks, because I think they're going to do some moving up. From the sounds of it, and I know you have to be extremely careful when trying to consider what a team might do. You have to be careful when you're reading into what somebody's saying or trying to figure it out and use context to come up with a reason why these guys may or may not make picks. You won't really know, and they won't really know until things start moving in a certain direction. If there's a run on certain players. James Gladstone said yesterday, yeah, people have tendencies, but people also break those tendencies during the draft. So, and this is critical too, you got 10 coaching changes. So even though a lot of those coaches are coaches that have been at previous stops, like Robert Saleh, John Harbaugh, it may be, you can get a gauge on what they're thinking and what they're not thinking, right? But you can't really do that. Even with Aaron Glenn up in New York, if he has a lot of say-so in personnel, they're not running a 4-3 where you saw Glenn run what you saw him run as the defensive coordinator in Detroit. They're switching to a 3-4. Thus, the Devontae Sweat trade that they needed a nose tackle, and they got him from the Titans. They're changing their scheme. So there's a lot that goes into trying to read what other people will do and who other people like. I suspect that if there is a trade-up partner just based purely on how many picks they have, Seattle at 32, I don't know if they'll want to come all the way back to 56. But Atlanta, I think Atlanta's sitting there at like 42. And Atlanta doesn't have, Seattle has 3 picks. I think Atlanta has 5 or 6. And both have different reasons for needing more picks. Seattle just won a Super Bowl, so everybody wants to get paid and get money. Therefore, maybe they want a few bites of the apple to get guys in where they don't have to pay them a lot, but they can still be productive, right, to help them out on the back end. They did lose some people in free agency. They lost the running back, Kenneth Walker. They lost Boye Mafe at edge rusher. They also lost one of their starting DBs. So they're trying to, and they got Zach Charbonnet is coming off of an ACL injury. So they may need multiple players at different positions. Atlanta has a new GM, Ian Cunningham, who's a finalist here with James Gladstone for this job in Jacksonville. Cunningham came from Chicago. You don't think in his first draft he wants to go out there and try to get some things that's going to help fortify that team so they can finally get out of football mediocrity? Yeah. So on the surface, those are the teams that you look forward to. I'll say I'm going to go, I said 8.5. Let me go 9 for my personal. I think I'm going to take the over on the 8.5. That they're going to take 9 picks. I think they're going to move around a little bit, and then at some point you might even see them move back to get some more currency. And maybe what they move back, they don't get currency for 26, they get it for 27. But at some point, I would think that the Jaguars would be able to do that. Best player available, even James Gladstone said yesterday that, hey, man, it comes with a little nuance now, because best player available may not be which player we believe, without thinking about context and without giving consideration to what we're going to ask them to do, without giving consideration to our roster structure. It's not who's going to have the better career. And sometimes it's not even who's talented. It might be who's more talented if you're talking about two guys at the same position. But it could very well be a situation where another guy makes your team better or taps more into your identity. If you're going for more power on offense, it's almost as if, like, if you had a draft, you had Travis Etienne and you had Chris Rodriguez, and you knew if you get Etienne, that's all you get. But if you get Chris Rodriguez, you get Rodriguez and something else. The room, the money, $6 million to $13 million. So you look at the draft the same way, and you say, okay, we can get these are just examples. We can get Etienne here, but if we wait, we drop back, we can get Chris Rodriguez here. But by dropping back, we now get a chance to go draft a linebacker too. And we get more powerful, even though we lose a little bit of explosiveness with him. We have that already in Bashal Tootin. So it's almost like you're doing it, and instead of just best pure overall player, you're saying best player for us. And it's not necessarily always based on positional need as much as it is maybe based on what he gives us that we can't get with the other player, even though the other player is more talented. Does that make sense? If you're trying to get bigger and stronger, if you're trying to get more physical, if you're trying to be, in some cases, faster as a team, more athletic as a team, and guys need refinement in other areas, but if the speed is something that you absolutely need, you take it and then refine him with all the nuances of the position. But you can't do it the other way. If he knows all the nuances of the position, but he keeps you as a slow team, then all he does is basically make you stay the way you are. So you go for the thing, the superpower that helps you become something different. So all of those things matter. Make sure you tap into the draft. Look at some tape, man, and figure it out. It's going to be fun to see how the Jaguars operate, being that they have day 2 picks. All of y'all the day 1 picks because you're everydayers. You can even cement that a little bit more by tapping into the Everydayers Club, man. Look down in the description of this podcast, wherever you watch or listen. And once you tap in, you'll figure it out, man. And for as little as $5, you get ad-free shows on our audio platforms, as well as access to our merchandise and future discourse with me, of course, and so much more on the Everydayers Club. Hit it up, man. We'll see you later here on Locked On Jaguars. Tune in for a bonus show that'll come up a little bit later, and we will see you.